Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
I'm looking at some quotes. I think they're unathletic. Don't move well laterally. Most unenjoyable time. And I kept looking for your name. No? Bad way to start the show?
No, there's a lot of people who look for my name. Fortunately, has not come up in the police blotter yet that I know of, at least.
All right. So I realize coaches will send messages through the media about how they feel about things. But I've always been of the opinion, based on job, that teams are Las Vegas. In other words, what happens here stays here.
Yeah.
I know you're thinking Las Vegas, and you kept thinking, "Hey, roulette, craps." Like, no.
Well, teams
It's
do.
just hard working with somebody like you that is always thinking in the gutter.
Teams do roll the dice on things, but yes,
you are always in the gutter, and I have to realize I'm not working with Kyle this week. All right,
but yes, I definitely see what you're saying.
Whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You can be upset about where you are, and in your post, if you decide that, hey, look, this is my last game or whatever, what are your thoughts? And hey, you know what, this is the most unenjoyable team I've been around, and you want to say that, go ahead, because it's you're the person that's retiring or leaving your job or whatever it happens to be. But with a team, it's okay to give honest answers. Because keep in mind, St. John's is still very much somewhere in the mix. They may be last 4 out or last 8 out, but they're still around the neighborhood. They can still get there. I mean, it's one thing to sit there and say, look, there are times we struggle moving laterally and things like that. That's just him as commentating on it. Instead of saying, they're just not athletic. And I think they're slow laterally. About 5 guys who are slow laterally. And that's the issue is that are you out there at that point just based on how you're saying it? Instead of saying, he says, there are times we don't get there laterally. That's fine. That's just a commentating on, why Seton Hall came back from a 12-point deficit and won, and that was one of the issues you had to overcome. And if you want to say, hey, look, we have to be more precise than other teams, we're not quite as athletic as other teams.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's not throwing anybody on the bus. That's saying, hey, look, we have to be more precise. We're not as athletic as other teams. That means our margin of error is smaller. Now, what's wrong with saying that? Nothing. It's the way he said it. But he was very matter-of-fact about it. He was not yelling and screaming. He wasn't yelling and screaming. Now, here's a part, though, that I will say is an important part to remember in what he said. All right? He was asked about regrets of taking the job. He says, no, not at all. He says, it's not St. John's, it's my team. I think they're very respectful. They hear, but they don't listen. He said, it's taken me a month to get them to throw bounce passes, actually 2 months. That part, I understand. Like, that sounds like you're ripping your team at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest with you, this is, in today's coaching, you've got to get some sort of breakthrough moment with them where they're hearing it, but then start listening to it. And that is a problem for some coaches right now, and especially when you are talking about a generation of players that went through COVID and had to do everything remotely for for a portion of time. The ability to listen as opposed to hearing is something that does have to be overcome right now by some young people. It does. I mean, it has to be overcome by some older people as well. I've been in our staff meetings. No, just kidding. But so he does make an important point there, which I added to with the COVID part of it, that we do have to remember that, what they've been through. And he says they hear, but they don't listen. That is an accurate description of some, not all, but some of the athletes that you're trying to do things with today.
No question.
Right? They hear it, but they don't listen to it. Right? And I'll give you an example, a loose example. I'm not going to get specific about it. There was a certain way that Joe Crispin wanted Penn State to attack Nebraska, right? And they do it once, and then the next 3 times down the floor, they wouldn't do it. And they'd get into the media timeouts, and he'd have to keep saying to them, guys, I need you to attack this way. And it wasn't just one side of the floor or the other. It was either side of the floor. Didn't matter what side, whatever the ball was. He wanted them to attack in a certain way. And when they attacked that way, they would have success. They would get a good shot, whatever. It didn't mean it was going in, but they would get a good shot, whatever. But they'd only do it like once out of 3, once out of 4 times. And in every media timeout, they were emphasizing to them over and over again last Saturday about you got to attack this way. And there was a game they had earlier in the year where they used this similar plan of attack because Nebraska was very similar in terms of how its defensive structure and personnel to a team they played back in November. And that team would be Texas A&M, by the way. Okay, just saying. Okay. And that's the part of hearing but not listening. Well, that's on the coaches. No, that's not on the coaches. If you say it 100 times, okay, and it only takes one person to not hear it. I mean, it only takes one person not listen. You can have 4 guys out there that listened to it, and you got one guy out there that didn't, and guess what?
Yeah.
Okay? That's why I talk about in football all the time. I say in football all the time. If there's one guy in practice that can't run the play right, you can't run the play. I'll change him up. But that's a loose definition. But if you have one guy that's probably part of your critical personnel group that can't run the play right, you can't run the play.
Yeah.
Because you need all 11 to run it the right way. And the coaches spend all week going through, okay, these are the first down plays we like to run. These are the second down plays we run. These are the third down plays we want to run. And they'll go over and over and over again, and then they'll figure out which ones have the players really taken to and have down based on situation, yards to go, down, everything. Coaching's not easy in that regard because you have to get the message through to not just a couple of people. I mean, I only have to talk to you, and you have no idea what I'm saying. I mean, you're barely listening. Look, what are you on the PointsBet app again?
No.
Oh, come on.
PointsBet app. No.
MGM?
No betting for me. I gambled, I'd be in a world of trouble.
You'd have worse T-shirts than that?
Oh, there's no doubt. Wore one yesterday.
Yeah. It's getting to the point where I don't have to say it. But that's one of the tough parts of coaching, and one of the challenges. How can I get everybody to listen? It's not hearing, it's listening. That's a step.
Mm-hmm.
Where they, and look, they can listen, for example, and they make a mistake, that's fine. Right? You knew exactly what you were supposed to do. I can see, but you made a mistake. Okay.
Yeah.
Guess what? Mistakes happen.
Right.
Yeah. You just take it, you move on. But it wasn't because you didn't know what we were trying to do. You just made a mistake. Okay. That's fine. That's right. That's not great, but it's acceptable. How about that? And in basketball, there's a little bit of ad lib to it. Because of how somebody defends it or what they want to do and so forth. But that's when he gets to this part, I think they're very respectful. Good. They hear, but they don't listen. That is out front of everybody. And for some players, an accurate description across the country of some players. Not all, but some.
There's no doubt.
And they're also 18 to 22 years old, which now brings us to last night's UConn-Creighton game. UConn runs Marquette out of the building on Saturday. Was that game in Hartford? I can't remember if it was at Gamble or Hartford. But they run Marquette out. Marquette was ranked 4th in the country. They just ran them out of the building. They go to Omaha last night. Number 1, unanimous. And Creighton ran them out. By what, 19?
Yeah.
Welcome to college basketball.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
That's why you haven't had an undefeated team since '76 Indiana.
Yep.
Kentucky had a shot, but then
Kentucky
lost.
Had a shot. UNLV had a shot in '92.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Duke beat them.
Mm-hmm. Final Four, yep.
So it's hard to do. Number of games, level of competition. Level of competition has really changed over the years. That's why I give. Now, don't choke everybody when I say this. But that's where I give Kelvin Sampson a lot of credit. All right. Kelvin Sampson changes conferences. Now, not by his doing. It's, his athletic department. They were looking to move up from the American. And it turned out that when Texas and Oklahoma went to the SEC, the lifeboat was extended to Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, BYU. So here he is, after dominating the American and getting to a Final Four in the process. He now changes conferences. All new teams, all new venues, all new personnel, all new set of coaches and coaching styles. Okay, that's a lot of work that has to be done in scouting reports when you change a conference. And look, coaches change jobs and they run into the same thing. Happens. Mike's had to do that with his staff this year. Sure. Let's face it, at VCU, they weren't playing Michigan State and others. Now, they may have run into them once in a while, but no. So it's all new group. But Kelvin Sampson's had to do that, and they're winning. Shedd's a terrific point guard. Let's start with that.
There's no question.
High IQ guy, really good player, and their defensive style is different than what they see in the Big 12. He's made that work. And they're ranked number 2 in the country right now, right behind UConn. We'll see what. I think UConn's got Villanova this weekend.
This weekend, yeah.
But you have to look at him. I'll go back years ago when Maryland came into the Big Ten. I think they finished second or something like that in the conference, second or third first year. They were really good. And I voted Mark Turgeon Big Ten Coach of the Year. It was an easy vote for me because they came in after playing ACC, and like once in a while in an ACC Big Ten Challenge, they'd face a Big Ten team. They had to learn all new teams. And this is before they had the mass transfer portal. Okay? So it's like 2014, right around there. And they put together a really good year. They made the NCAA tournament. I gave that coaching staff all the credit in the world because if you're facing somebody on a regular basis, and I know there's interchangeable parts, like Guerrier tonight's going to be starting for Illinois. Last time Penn State played him, he was with Syracuse in the Barclays Center. Right, but Coleman Hawkins is still there. Luke Goody is still there. Terrence Shannon is still there. Right? If you're sitting there and you're looking at it on a season-by-season basis, all right, let's take a look at Luke Goody. Right? Well, look, okay. Well, he's a little bit better here. He's kind of stayed the same there. Now, but you already had a baseline on him that you can really play off of what, okay, let's go through, okay, last year, okay, this year, okay. All right. Yeah, we don't have to do much different, or we may have to make a little change as to how we guard him as compared to last year because he got a little bit better here and here, but he really stayed the same here, or he's struggling here. But at least you have a baseline to start with. Coleman Hawkins, baseline to start with. He's a terrific player, by the way. Inside, outside, rebounding. And he is, for a big man, he might be the best passing big man in the conference. But those are the exact same words I used last year. Penn State played him 3 times last year. Those are the same words I used on him last year. He's older. Has a little bit better personnel around him this year, too. But see, I have a baseline as a broadcaster of watching him.
Uh-huh.
Okay? That's where Kelvin Sampson, there may be a baseline in a couple of guys. I'm sure there are a couple of guys in the conference that went from the American to go over there. I doubt he'd ever seen Hunter Dickinson before. I don't think Houston played Michigan. But they've had to learn everybody first time through. Now, in that conference, I think you play everybody twice. I think.
Yep.
I mean, under the current deal, it's going to change moving forward with a cast of thousands. What do you have, 16 in that league when it's all said and done? I think it's 16.
It is 16, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So I give him credit for that. UConn, I'm watching last night's game, and Creighton hit shots. I mean, this is what I always love about people when the games are, well, the scheme was a problem. Okay, they're hitting shots left and right. Now, did UConn make a couple of defensive mistakes in rotation? Yeah. But you wanted to see how many tough shots Creighton hit last night? Sometimes the other guy just hit shots.
Just lucky shots, yeah.
Well, not lucky shots, but just hit shots.
Yeah.
Okay? And guess what? It makes everything else look better when you hit shots.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're going to make an adjustment. They're still hitting shots.
Mm-hmm. There's not much you can do when that happens. Sometimes it's not your night.
We spend so much time on these shows overcomplicating games.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
When the reality is, going into the game, we don't talk enough about matchups, like pro and con, because one of the challenges of coaching, you said we talked about the hearing versus listening, okay, is that I have strengths and I have good matchups here, here, and here. I got a bad matchup here. How do I mask the bad matchup? How do I accentuate the good matchup? How do I then mask a bad or mediocre matchup? Like, that's part of the challenge of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what about your scheme? Just okay, that's fine. Enjoy the beer at the tailgate. We're good. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's, yeah. I mean, that's what it comes down to. How can you do that in any sport?
Yeah, no question.
And sometimes you can't overcome it. No. Or here's one: you mask it for a period of time, and the more people watch video,
mm-hmm.
right, and they look at it and go, "We found it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is how they're doing it. This is how we beat it."
Yep.
Okay? If you get like 3 to 4 games worth of video, and you can see how they do it. That's why when I talk about Iowa women's basketball, and when we'll have Rob Brooks on the show Tuesday next week. He's the play-by-play voice of women's basketball. I'm going to ask him about the job Lisa Bluter has done, right? Where we're some of the time, in fact, I think the majority of the time, not always, but the majority of the time, they are masking Caitlin Clark's defense, right?
Yeah, put her in a perfect spot. Yeah.
Right, they put her in a spot where she can help them, but God forbid she's out there one-on-one with somebody else. It's just not going to happen. It's like, I mean, there's an old saying where you're sitting there watching a video and go, okay, where's Waldo? Oh, found him or her.
Yeah. That more often than not, aside from Ray Allen, I think was a little bit of an exception. But that's where, when you're one of the best shooters, that's their weakness a lot of times when they enter the next level. I think that's one thing. It's with Clark. It was the case with Curry. It was the case with Reggie Miller when he first moved in.
I mean, Curry struggles defensively still.
Yep, still. Yep. And that's where I think when you're a great shooter, and a lot of times you're used to being that person that is going to be up top or going to be that person that's going to be around the wing. You're not going to necessarily be that lockdown on-ball defender. And that's the weakness I think a lot of them take to the next level. Ray Allen, I think, again, was that one exception, I think, where he was pretty good.
Again, it's not like she doesn't try.
No, absolutely not.
She tries on defense. She's just not a great defender.
Right.
Oh, how dare you? Oh, for goodness sakes. We can look at players as players.
Yes.
Okay? We don't have to sit there and go, oh, and okay? All of her accomplishments are jaw-dropping.
Yes.
Right? But it's okay to look at somebody as a player.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay? I mean, the South Carolina game in the semifinal last year is a perfect example of how they masked what they're doing with her defensively and how they used her. They put her on the weakest shooter that South Carolina had. And the girl, I think her name was Johnson, was only a 19% three-point shooter. Well, they took her and they just kind of like let her go back and double the post. They left Johnson wide open. Well, Johnson hit a couple of threes. Now, I don't go out and guard her until she hits the third. Okay?
Yeah.
Because and then after the game, remember the whole point after the game, the whining, moaning, and complaining? They disrespected her. No. In the scouting report, you're open for a reason. Okay?
19%, you're going to be open.
And you actually have people buying that. Yeah, they disrespect her. How can you buy that? Do you know if the ball is stuffed or inflated? Okay? Here's a stat sheet. She's 19% from three. Go ahead, shoot it. Yeah. Okay, if you make it, okay. You make a second one now, I got to start thinking.
Sure.
All right, until you do. But they used her in a double position.
Yeah.
Because they deliberately put her on the weakest offensive player. That's fine. That's smart. That's intelligent coaching, right? Along the way, and Clark did a good job with it. But that's what I always love that stuff, though. Oh, disrespectful. What the? Here's one for you. Why don't you be a better shooter?
Yeah, shoot the ball. Put it in the hoop.
I'll respect you more. Become a better shooter. We'll go out and cover you. That's how she's sitting there listening to the shows. I go, what are you talking about? A lot of people are really good at it.
Yeah,
Right? But there's also, like, I'll hear some go, what? Yeah. And somebody will make a comment and say, yeah, boy, that really was disrespectful. No, it wasn't. Right? Okay, guess what? They're sitting in the scout meeting, right? And they're all saying, okay, which one's Waldo?
Yeah. And that's
got it.
That's where you literally say, hey, yeah, that was disrespectful because I'm going to show you why it was disrespectful and knock down 6 threes on you.
Yeah, I know.
That's really where
it's just,
and that's,
it's, that's why we talk about matchups, what you can do, what you can't do, the problems you have, how do you mask them, how do you accentuate the good ones. I mean, that's a lot of what you have to do as time goes. So there you are. That is the I don't really, but the UConn thing last night, like they hit shots. Sometimes it's that simple. All right. Oh, what was the key to the game? They hit shots. Yeah, but what did they do? No, they hit shots. I watched the game. There are a couple tough ones out there, and a couple of those that were really deep that you don't really want to go out and cover anyway. It's too far out. Right? It changes all the spacing. You got to roll the dice. They're going to, oh, great, he made it. Great. Fabulous. I think UConn got it down to 10 once in the second half. And boom, right back. They got it right back to 16 or 17 or something like that. And that's just, you have those nights.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is this. To win the national championship, you can't have one of those nights. No. You can't have any of those nights. You have to go out and have good nights. You don't have to have great nights, but you have to have good nights, all six to get there. Now, last year they did. They won all 6 games by double digits. Okay. But you saw last night, they go out there, and after being just the look of being an unbeatable team on Saturday, they were beaten soundly on a Tuesday.
Tuesday night.
Okay. Yeah, and that's how tough it is to win the title. I mean, look at all the numbers. Last year's Final Four is a good example of it. It wasn't. It was great for the sport of basketball because it tells everybody that a lot of people have a chance. It was not great for the TV ratings because there was not enough name recognition out there for the fans to latch onto. But when you have Miami, San Diego State, Florida Atlantic, UConn in your Final Four, that means there were a lot of number 1 seeds that lost. Like all 4.
All 4, yeah.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
Purdue lost in the first round to Fairleigh Dickinson.
Yeah. Yep.
1 versus a 16. Second time ever.
I was going to say it's only happened in Virginia, the other one.
Yeah, UMBC beat Virginia in 2018.
And then they went and won the national title the following year, so they learned from it in a big way.
Right. No, exactly.
Yeah.
It's... And what's interesting about that, now, Fairleigh Dickinson does not fall into this category about what I'm about to say. And I'll explain in a second why. I remember years ago, I was watching, Penn State was in the bracket in Tucson. They're going to play Temple. The game after that was going to be San Diego State and Northern Colorado. And San Diego State had Kawhi Leonard. Oh, he's diseased.
I'll tell you.
Right? And San Diego State had Kawhi Leonard. And Northern Colorado in the first half of that game, they are fighting tooth and nail. It's a really close game. And somebody said, I can't figure out why this game's close. And I said, you know what? I said, I actually can. And they said, why? What are you seeing? I said, well, it's not schematically. I said, I didn't know much about Northern Colorado, so I'm reading the press notes. They said they won 25 consecutive games.
Yeah.
And they won their conference. They were the Big Sky champions. I said, they won their conference. I said, this team is confident as all get out as to who they are and what they do. I said, they're not looking at, oh, my goodness, there's San Diego State. Oh, my God. I mean, this is, everybody knew Kawhi Leonard was good, but he wasn't like he's thought of.
Yeah.
Right? I said, so they're out there. They're out there just doing their thing. I said, now, in the end, San Diego State has more talent. They should win. I said, but all these, we talk about the upsets in there that happen. A lot of these upsets happen of smaller conference champions who are used to winning and have a little championship of that little championship DNA about it, that they get out there and then they don't fear you.
Yeah.
Now, Fairleigh Dickinson's different. Well, how are they different? Well, they're different for this reason. They didn't win the regular season of the conference or the tournament. The only reason they got in is Merrimack was in that James Madison football category of we're transitioning up from Division II to Division I, and they don't let you get the automatic bid. They let them play in the tournament, But Fairleigh Dickinson didn't win either the regular season or the tournament. Merrimack won both, but they weren't eligible to go to the NCAAs.
And that's also the other part of why, back to your point of you just can't have off nights. And
Ever.
No, and that's where I think a lot of these teams that are high seeds, that become the number one overall seed even sometimes, you are, I don't want to say coasting to the finish. A lot of times you see these teams...
Okay.
You see these teams get knocked out second round of their conference tournament because you feel like they know where they're locked up, they know where they're in, and then suddenly they get to the tournament, they face a team that was hungry to get there the entire time, fought like heck to get there the entire time, just backed their way in. You always see, it's almost like the NFL playoffs, where you see that team back in, and they're dangerous. That's happened a lot of times.
But remember, okay, who's the last team Purdue beat last year?
Penn State in the
Big Ten tournament championship game. Penn State had a shot from Cam Winter on the last play to win it, and ball got deflected on the way in. He then tried to heave one up because they had it set up what they wanted, right? But then they got blocked and then ended it. Okay. Purdue had to play 3 games in 3 days to get there. I know they beat Ohio State in the semifinals. I cannot remember who they beat in the quarters. All right. They had to play 3 games in 3 days to get there. And then had to play on a Thursday? Because Penn State played on a Thursday.
I want to say Purdue might have been the Friday.
The Friday?
Yeah.
Right?
I can't remember entirely.
But you go through it's Fairleigh Dickinson had been off.
Yeah. Yep.
And Purdue had to play 3 games in 3 days. And guess what? Did not coast in. Ohio State was right with them in the semifinal because I was at the game. Ohio State's with them in the semifinal. Penn State is making this team grind it to the end, all right, where it's the last game being played before the tournament selection. And they've got Purdue on their heels. And in a game where Seth Lundy fouled out, that's a different topic. Seth didn't have a lot to do with him fouling out, but I'll leave it at that. But Seth Lundy fouled out.
I remember.
And Penn State's still putting heat on him. But Purdue had to play 3, this quarterfinal, if I recall correctly, they kind of went through. But the semifinal against Ohio State, they had to fight hard to win that game and did. And then Penn State, they had to fight hard to win that game on consecutive days. So it takes a little bit out of you. All right? Fairleigh Dickinson had been off a little bit. So sometimes you get these teams that do get to the conference championship game, win it, like, oh, yeah, they've got momentum in the whole thing. But they're also, really had to expend a lot of energy to get there. I mean, the last 2 games they played, again, I can't remember. I think their quarterfinal game they had no problem with. But I was there for the Ohio State and Penn State games, obviously. And I can tell you right now, I mean, they had to work so hard to get there, to win it, that you wonder how much it took out of their legs to do that because they had no bounce at all against Fairleigh. And Fairleigh Dickinson played well. Same thing with Virginia. If I recall, Virginia won the ACC tournament that year. Say they win 3 games in 3 days in a really good conference. They went out and played UMBC. Now, that game was on a Friday night because I remember Penn State was at Notre Dame for the NIT. So Dick Girardi, Jeff Tarman, and I went out to a Buffalo Wild Wings and watched the game, which, by the way, is where we watched the Fairleigh Dickinson Purdue game. It must be the Buffalo Wild Wings experience where a 16 beats a 1. But that's...
I've never been in one.
Oh, they're really incredibly... Okay, you're not missing much, but it's still not. It's not bad.
It's still not bad. Yeah.
Not bad, but you're not
bad.
Like I wouldn't set it as a goal. It's like Dick has already set up a reservation at Murray's in Minneapolis for next Friday night. Now that's a goal. Okay. A Buffalo Wild Wings, pretty good.
Yeah.
Not bad. Although I had to start thinking like you do, so maybe it is a goal.
There you go.
That's what's so great about sports and hard about sports.
Sure.
And it's going to be what I'm going to say here. All right. Winning is hard.
Mm-hmm. Sure is.
And this is not ESPN's fault by any way, stretch, or form. Okay? I'm not criticizing ESPN at all because they're just doing their job.
Right.
But what do they do every night? They show you highlights.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over and over and over again. And guess what highlights do in terms of your mindset about the game? It makes it look easy.
Makes it look very easy. Absolutely. It doesn't show the hard parts.
It makes
just like recruiting videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It makes the game and the performances seem easy. And when you're out there as a fan, you're showing up at every game, or you're watching every game intently on TV, or in our case, broadcasting the game, you see the entirety of the game.
Yep.
And that's why sometimes I wonder if people watch other games and they go through these shooting slumps and droughts. Everybody goes through shooting slumps and droughts in every game. Everybody does.
Sometimes it's that simple. Shots don't fall.
Can you keep,
there's a lid on the hoop sometimes. It does happen.
Can you keep it to a minimum? Okay? Is it possible? Instead of having a 5-minute drought, can I make the drought 2.5?
Yeah.
All right? Everybody goes through it. Right? Maybe it's not tonight. But the next 2 games, they'll probably have droughts.
Sure.
Everybody does. We just watched UConn go out and blitz Marquette. How long were the scoring droughts last night for the number 1 ranked team in the country that was said to be unbeatable? They had long scoring droughts last night. I mean, they had the lead 23-21. Creighton ran off 10 unanswered points. Guess who was in the scoring drought? The team with 0. Okay. Everybody goes through it. But what happens is that they'll show highlights and it makes the winning look easy.
Sure.
And it's nobody's fault. 0. Nobody. Zip, zilch. ESPN is doing its job. Right? Their job is not to show you the entire game. They already, in some cases, just showed it to you. Right? Houston played Iowa State the other night. Can't remember who they had on postgame. It may have been Kelvin postgame. And he was talking about how it was Kelvin Sampson, because he was saying that because Shed is not on the Wooden Award Final 20 ballot, because I got my Final 20 ballot. He's not on there. And he was talking about him and being the best point guard in the country and so forth. But they showed a whole bunch of highlights of him and other highlights of the game at Iowa State because they just did the entire game. ESPN just did the game in its entirety. Now it's their job in SportsCenter to do highlights. But what highlights do is it makes the winning look easy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not ESPN's fault. It's just the perception of it. And when you're out there watching every game, right, in its entirety, dang, it's not easy. That's why you appreciate it so much. You appreciate any win because it's just hard to do along the way. It's hard. And that's, to me, what makes sports fun and rewarding is that the winning of it is difficult. So when it happens, it's really rewarding.
There's no doubt. And the other part of it is, again, this is ESPN doing their job. This is other networks doing their job. But, a lot of times when you hype teams, it's the same way. And there's no question about it. The teams can win a championship, and if they do nothing after that championship to get into the following season with their roster, doesn't mean they're the best again. Yeah, these teams get better. These teams work harder, and that's what makes it that much more difficult. That's why you don't see a three-peat in the NFL. You could see it next year, who knows? But that's why you don't see a lot of back-to-back champions in sports anymore, because it's not only parity, it's tough to win. Yes. It really is. There's a lot of things that make it that much more difficult, and the other things that make it difficult, yes, there's salary caps, yes, there's recruiting, but there's also teams out there getting better chasing you.
Yep.
It's that much more difficult because of that.
Yeah. So that's all set. So football-wise, graduate assistant Danny O'Brien is now listed as its quarterback coach. Okay. Now, everybody already knew it. Mm-hmm. It's just an official designation of it. But, like Torrance Brown, graduate assistant focus, defensive line. Kevin Check, okay, offensive line focus. Jordan Lucas, secondary focus. It's good to see him yesterday, by the way. Didn't get a chance to talk to him, but it's just good to see him out there. And Danny O'Brien, who I just think the world of. Mm-hmm. Danny O'Brien, yep. I'll never forget, it was National Letter of Intent Day. What year, I can't remember. But Danny was trying to get into coaching at that time. And we had doing Letter of Intent Day on the second floor of Lash Building in the lobby area outside of where James' office would be. And I went back to the back area, and Danny was there. And so I struck up a conversation with him about, his career at Maryland. I said, I remember the day in the spring where you came and visited when Bill O'Brien was the coach. And, I said, I really thought they were going to get you. I really did. Because he was the ACC freshman of the year. James was his coach. Right? James was his coach. Right? And he was the freshman of the year. And now he's going to transfer, visits Penn State. And you're like, oh, this is great. Right? And they end up going to Wisconsin. Now, Danny ended up in the CFL for a period of time. But he'd come back once in a while. And every single time, this guy is intelligent, personable. Everybody relates to Danny. Danny relates to everybody, and people relate to Danny. And he's a great teacher. He's a great teacher. So, yeah. So as a grad assistant, he's now officially listed as the quarterback's coach. As a grad assistant. I can't say enough good things about him.
Yeah, same.
And somebody said, well, he's the one that keeps picking the quarterback winner and the whole thing. Yeah, he keeps picking the quarterback winner. Oh, and then this has been a good one. I've had a couple people ask me about this. And I look at who the winners are being, because they put out on Twitter who the performer of the day happens to be. Right? And I think they've had 5 of these so far. I think number 6 is tomorrow. And I was at yesterday, so I saw this with my own eyes as to what was going on. And Bo hasn't won all of them, but Bo's won 4 of the 5. And somebody said, what's going on with Aller? What's going on with Aller? Okay. Okay. Let's calm the waters here for a moment. All right? This is Drew's 3rd year of going through it. Okay? Drew is very much out there. Drew is busting his backside out there. But it doesn't mean in these kind of drills that it's his strong suit. Okay? Okay? It never has been. He is way better at it than he was before, but it's never been the strongest thing he does. Right? But he busts his backside. So don't ever read too much into these things. I mean, people are looking for tea leaves. It's okay. It's just don't. Okay. It's like I tell you all the time. Stop thinking.
That's right.
Don't think so much. It only hurts the club.
It just got less than one. Don't think. It only hurts the club.
But I've had people say to me, say, "What's going on?" I go, "With what?"
Good Lord.
Oh, goodness gracious. I want to say one quick thing here. Dick Girardi is driving up to the game, and he's driving Dave Jones up tonight. He's going up there with him. All right. And then this is going to be the final game that Dave will cover of Penn State basketball here. Because we know, as everybody knows, Dave's retiring in April.
Mm-hmm.
Now, has Dave at times been a lightning rod
Sure.
for people because of his opinions? Yes. But let me tell you something. Number one, personally,
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one, I love talking to Dave. I do. I've always, how can you? Easily.
Yeah.
Like, people are people. I really personally like Dave a lot. Number two, he is a brilliant writer. Look at how he turns phrases and, the approach he takes to stories.
Mm-hmm.
He's a terrific writer, right? And when you write a column, you want to provoke thought. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it.
Agree with it, exactly.
You can vehemently disagree with it,
Sure.
but you can provoke thought. And of all the writers in this state, he has consistently taken more interest in Penn State basketball for a longer period of time,
Right.
than anybody. Mark Brennan's always taken a long-term interest.
Absolutely.
Dave Bauer's taken a long-term interest so far. But Dave, right, of those three, he's the one that's closest to retirement. Since he's okay. So that means he's been, and he throws his heart and soul into doing it. And he's thrown his heart and soul into covering basketball everywhere, but also Penn State. And he worked it out last year when Penn State got to Des Moines. Okay? He worked it out with the people at the Patriot and Penn Live to get out there, and it wasn't easy for him to do. But he wanted to be there for it. Okay? So it is always easy to take shots at people that you don't agree with their opinion, but his job is to provoke thought through opinion. And you don't have to agree with it.
Right.
Right? But did the columnist provoke thought? Did the columnist provoke a conversation? And he does that.
Yeah.
Right? Have I agreed with everything Davis put out there? Of course not. Has he agreed with everything I've said? Of course not. Are we friends? Yeah. Okay? Because we get along great. But that doesn't mean he agrees with everything I say, and it doesn't mean I agree with everything he writes. But he makes you think.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's actually in the end what the job happens to be. Right? Dan Shaughnessy was recovering from heart surgery from the Boston Globe. Right? Didn't vote for Derek Jeter on the Hall of Fame ballot. Well, Yankee fans are thoroughly, completely outraged about how could you he should be unanimous, and you kept him from being unanimous. He can vote for anybody he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And he can provoke thought over why he didn't vote for him. Okay?
He at least voted. That's the one thing I would say about these Hall of Fame voters, saying there's how many of them don't turn their ballots in.
I think he voted for one person or something, I think.
Yeah.
Right? But there were a group of old-time writers that had a stance that nobody should be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Sure.
Now, I vehemently disagree with that.
Completely.
Right? But they have the ballot, and it's their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And they outline why they wouldn't do it. Well, I don't agree with their outline.
Yeah.
but they maybe think about it. Again, you don't have to agree. Right? The only time that you want to call into question somebody that either is in this job or writes is if they don't have their facts in order, or they don't multi-source something. Now you can call into question the broadcaster, you can call into question the writer, you can call into whatever, because they were sloppy. And as I tell my class, I want you to be second and right, not first and wrong.
Exactly.
All right? But that's where you can call into question their ability or what they're doing or their job, or if they're doing something unethical. But if somebody's out there delivering opinions about what they see, what they think, whatever, come on. But, Dave's going to make his last trip up here. I just wanted to at least say something about it. And, it may be, but people have heard me over the years. I've always said I'm a long list of nice things about Dave. Yeah. And I remember when Dick Girardi went into the Basketball Writers Hall of Fame down in Dallas, Dave and I were sitting together at the table in Dallas, right? Yeah. And, along with Jack Girardi, and Jack passed away a couple months ago, Dick's older brother, who got Jack into basketball. Jack was a big time, loved basketball. And in the latter stages of his life, which basketball did Jack love? He lived, he finally got a job and was working in Connecticut and got into UConn basketball. And it turned out that when Dick went into the Hall of Fame, UConn was in the Final Four and won it that year in Arlington with Kevin Ollie as the coach.
Yep.
All right.
Big Kentucky.
Yep. And the three of us sat at that table. We had a blast that morning at that breakfast. It was great. And Dick delivered a tremendous speech. Tremendous speech. And by the way, he's getting an award up at Saratoga this summer, too, for everything he's done with horse racing. Oh, yeah. No. This is another Hall of Fame for him. And he's earned it.
Absolutely.
And when you write over 7,000 stories in your career, over 7,000, right? That's a lot of late nights. That's a lot of weekends. That's a lot. It takes a lot of time to do all of that. A lot of time. And then in the end, you get recognized for it. Absolutely. If you're really good at it, you get recognized for it. And I'm glad to see Dick getting recognition, because this is going to be, now he had the Basketball Writers Hall of Fame thing, but this is the second time he's had something in the past year where he's been recognized in a Hall of Fame kind of setting, which is really great. Right? He's earned it.
Absolutely.
He just went into the Big Five Hall of Fame. Right? Big Five Hall of Fame. So his picture's up in the palestra, and Mike Rhodes sent me a great picture. Mike texted me this week about something, which to my credit I fouled up. Right? Right. Okay. I don't know if I can enlarge that or not, but that's Mike standing in front of Dick's picture at the palestra. Dick may have been a little younger. Can they see it, or do I back up?
I think so.
A little closer?
Yep. Straight up. There you go.
Yeah. So he says, Steve, send that to Dick. But he went into the Big Five Hall of Fame. Now he's got this deal coming up at Saratoga, and he's already in the U.S. Basketball Writers Hall of Fame. But yeah, Dave and I were both there for that. Now, Dave was there covering the Final Four. I came down specifically because Dick was going in. And it was great that Jack was there, because I've always liked. I think the first time I ran into his brother Jack was at Georgia Tech, and he sat with us. And Penn State won the game that night. He sat with us at the broadcast table. Smart, Dick's brother Jack was smart as basketball guy, as smart a basketball guy as I've been around. Oh, knew the game. And then I got to talk to you.
That's right. It's a free fall.
The first step to recovery is admitting the problem.
That's right. That's right.
All right, off the rec hall. That's the